Greetings. Welcome back, everyone, to our 13th episode in 36 as we journey through the Decans. We are today in the first Decan of Leo. Happy birthday, Leos! And we have a special Leo birthday in this Decan. Our special happy birthday to our beloved teacher, Demetra George. Happy birthday, Demetra.
We love you.
We love you. So yeah, here we are already at Leo, everyone. And we've got it called The Spotlight from Austin Coppock, Under Pressure by T. Susan Chang, and The Lord of Strife for the minor arcana, which is the Five of Wands, called the Lord of Strife here. And I feel like the Under Pressure coming from Chang is the idea of this solar energy, which is Leo, and this Decan's ruler, which is Saturn. So you have, opposites on the Thema Mundi. You've got, Saturn sort of like containing and pressurizing this solar light.
What are the dates related to this Decan again?
Oh, thank you.
From July 22nd or 23rd to August 1st or 2nd.
Cool. Thanks for that reminder, David. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to keep that like linear, and I really appreciate you bringing that in. So the card for the sun, just like we had in Cancer, it wasn't the moon card for Cancer, right? It was the Chariot. Well, here you would expect, maybe because it's such a solar Decan, that we would have the sun card for Leo, but we actually don't. We have Fortitude, which we're going to talk more about, the taming of the lion here. But in the Hermetic deck, it's called the Daughter of the Flaming Sword. And then for this specific Decan being ruled by Saturn, we've again got the Universe or the World card, which is called the Great One of the Night of Time. And I'm here again. Thank you so much for both being here. I'm here again with KD Dayton.
Hi.
And David Fisher from In the First Place. Thanks, y'all, for being here again. So what do you say we dive right into the first Decan of Leo with Austin Coppock in the 36 Faces, calling this the Spotlight. And we also have, well, I guess I can talk about this as we go, but we've got this idea of the stage and the spotlight, and then the mask that the performer might wear. And that's a little bit having to do with the spotlight, how it's directing its beams, and then what's happening backstage, as well as the concealment of what we decide to reveal and what we decide to conceal with the mask. So that's that solar / Saturnine play that we have. The spotlight shines on the otherwise dark and empty stage. The harsh light descends from above, and the finger of God points as a brilliant, scorching ray. The spotlight extracts a price for its blessings, and those not overwhelmed by base vanity approach the beam with both respect and fear. The power of this Decan is to focus a massive attention on one point or person. Although it appears singular, it's thus this nodal point where 10,001 gazes converge. To be able to direct this spotlight is a potent power. By directing attention somewhere other than the place where the real action occurs, one is thus able to go about certain activities unseen. And I think this is the idea of like the sun selecting and then Saturn operating on the outside of that light, or being able to decide, here, look at this, but not this over here. So this power over visibility can thus grant one both fame and invisibility. The ray can heal or scorch. And then he goes on to talk about the mask, again, what we allow people to see of our personality and our persona, and how the mask becomes infused with the spirit of the wearer as well as conceals the spirit of the wearer. The mask and the spotlight allow for mastery over appearances and invisibility. revelation and concealment.
Yeah, well, Saturn in the sign of Leo is in its detriment.
Right.
And so it's a very interesting combination that we have here of Sun, Saturn. They're basically opposites. And so I just think that that's a really interesting thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about that visibility versus mask dichotomy, is that they are kind of opposites, but they somehow come together in this Decan.
Yeah, and like the vying for the leading role essentially.
Yes.
And just I think it's a little bit talking about power of like, if you have the ability to stand in the spotlight, the actor is only showing pieces of themselves. Like obviously you're getting the role, not the person. But those things, as we know with fame, are often sort of convoluted, essentially, where we think we know the actor by the roles that they play or something like this, and we're choosing what people see when we step out there. We're choosing what to present, and therefore we're choosing what is concealed, and sort of the idea of power of look over here but not over here.
Yes, that visibility thing is what I was going to say really prompted that thought in me, because looking and focusing and selecting on one thing, but being able to hide away, which is Saturn, another thing. And of course, perfect analogy because you bring up actors and actresses during Leo season. So here we are.
And then do we want to just dive right into the tarot, because there's a few things that we could cover here. And I know we're going to be covering kind of a big topic because we have the Fortitude card, where we have this kind of play, just like we have this play between like Saturn and the Sun, and these power plays, right? Vying for the top leading role and or vying for positions of power. Like, what do we want someone to see and what do we want to be concealed? Just that kind of like opposition on the Thema Mundi. It's not as huge of a big deal, but we also have the strength versus justice debate happening here on the order of the cards. So do you want to kind of dive into what T-Season has to say, or your ideas of what you've put together as far as the order of the cards here?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I will share my screen now because, as always, I've prepared a few slides to show as examples. So I'm showing a number of different representations of strength or fortitude or force across multiple different decks. Those three terms are usually what it's referred to, but the interesting thing to note, which Elsa just alluded to, is the different Roman numerals at the top of each of these cards. Sometimes strength or force appears as the 8 in tarot, and sometimes it appears as the 11 in more traditional and medieval and Renaissance forms of tarot. So I wanted to kind of illuminate this because it is a really interesting piece to considering this card and also this Decan, I think. It really comes down to how much weight you place on which style of tarot you prefer. You could say that you prefer the more common Golden Dawn revised tarot or the more traditional type. But what that really means is one values a more numerological basis for the order of the cards, and one values a more astrological basis for the order of the cards. And of course, the more traditional or the older tradition is the numerological one. So essentially, when you look at the number 8 across all the other decks, all the other suites of the tarot cards, we can kind of get an idea of what the 8 means. And generally, we find that the 8 means balance, right? The 8 means a place of coming down to just the right situation, being able to be exactly where you need to be on a pivot point in order to make the choice and culminate the end of the deck or the suites. So that's something that we could see actually in some of the representations of the 8s. And to me, does this correspond more to you to strength or to justice? Right? That balance piece is absolutely justice. So we have a numerological reason why justice might in fact be 8, due to the patterns of the other 8s across the minor arcana cards. But the astrological reason why the Golden Dawn in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, more recent decks, made 8 strength is because of the order in which the major arcana cards that represent astrological signs of the zodiac fell. So we have the Chariot. Clearly that's Cancer. We just spent 3 decans talking about all the symbols of the Chariot or of Cancer in the Chariot card. And then after that, you would have Justice by the traditional way. Justice is a correspondence to the sign of Libra, which is completely out of order of the zodiac. That would be skipping both Leo and Virgo in the order. So essentially the justification for switching the justice and strength sign or cards were for the signs, the order of the signs. When we get to Virgo, that's going to be the Hermit, which is the 9. It's the next card in this journey. So it otherwise falls in good order that these cards would go by the traditional standard of 11 as force and 8 as justice. Yeah, so I'm curious if you all have ever come across this before, or maybe even, because I think we might have an example later, a strength or force or fortitude card that comes in at an even different number than 8 or 11.
Yeah, I think it's a hot topic, right? It's a hot debate for sure. I've heard it debated in many occult circles. I think there's validity to both. I just kind of go with whatever the artist does for the deck that I have, and I'm happy with that. But it does, we do come into a confrontation with it in ways where we might have to like pick one or something like this, as far as our own kind of worldview or our own magical or occult sort of standing ground or something like that. It's interesting that Leo wants us to choose and take a stand here on where we're at. But I think the Pythagorean Tarot talks a little bit about it, but doesn't go deep into it. It just has its own numerological evaluation of how it uses it. And I think, if anything, the Pythagorean, and I'm not saying the author of the Pythagorean deck views it this way. I'm just thinking that the Pythagorean tradition, being older than the tradition of the Golden Dawn, would probably lean towards the numerological value or something like this. But I know the Golden Dawn has deep, deep roots with the Kabbalah. So, I'm sure there's people that know more than me that could speak to this in a more educated way. But I guess, to me, I'm just glad that you brought it up so that people can know like that there are differences. They might not even be knowing, like when they're looking at the cards, that it falls in a different order depending on the deck they're using. Right. So I'm glad we bring it to light. But for our purposes today, obviously we're going with the astrological view, because we are going to be using the strength card or the lion card as our Leo card. So a point of, I guess, fact or practicality, I guess we're choosing to put the lion here,
Yes, yes.
Because it does make sense to put the justice with Libra in this way, and to have this sort of like, where we see in the Chariot, where we're sort of Hermes, or the self is sort of, or the vehicle of the spirit is sort of taming one horse that's spirit, one horse that's matter, or whatever. Here we kind of see that similar play of, taming the beast, or someone of a certain rank, spiritual rank, or inner strength, or inner purity, or something like this, has the ability to sort of work within the wild animalistic nature of the world, or their own temperament, or their own spirituality, or something like this. So I don't mind having this card right after the Chariot. I think it works as far as like taming those material matters. I think it works to have justice at Libra for our purposes, for the astrological counting, I guess you could say, but I don't have a really strong or firm.
No, and I
beliefs
don't think
around
it really, what you said is really important though, that it doesn't particularly matter. Like we know that tradition isn't always right, you know, and it can change, it can adapt, it can grow. So it's not to say that just because something is older, that that's the way we should do it. But I did want to mention that the other piece of this, right? So there's the 8 and what the 8 means numerologically, but what the 11 means as well actually more corresponds to the strength card, because 11 is like, it's a master number, I think they call them. It's not reduced to 1 + 1 as other double and triple digit numbers would be. It's a number in and of itself that's a sort of strength. It's sort of like moral and spiritual strength. So that too also would make me think more numerologically of the strength card versus the justice card. Whereas in the Rider-Waite-Smith decks and variations therein, justice is 11, which isn't quite the same. So,
You know, and I like the idea of the infinite being here, because it's like the sun, and we talk, you know, the infinity symbol, or the 8, let's say.
yeah.
Where you've got like the solar quality, which is like this selection, like the beam of selection, but the sun also represents the eternal, you know? So there's another sort of docket for the 8, I suppose. But I wanted to say, like, I wouldn't mind justice being our Leo card either, because the heart of Leo and the heart of the sun and all these things is like this fair and just ruler as well. Just like, you know, we might have the darkening of the light aspect that happens at the equinox with Libra. That makes just as much sense, I suppose, to have strength there. So both of them work. I guess we're sticking with this, right? I mean, I think we'll probably end up showing this card through the rest of Leo, the strength card versus the justice card. But let's imagine that we wanted to go with the strength card being placed in Libra, and the justice card being placed here with the sun. I don't mind it. I think you could still work with those archetypes.
And I freaking love that. I think I agree with you, but think about this. Leo is the domicile of the sun and Libra is the fall of the sun. So what are we saying, that these might be interchangeable, like the nature of justice and strength? Where does the sun operate best? You know?
Yeah, guys, you can decide for yourselves, and we'll see. I mean, we're just going to go, again, like I've said thrice now, with the strength card, because that's how Susan Chang has it laid out for us.
Absolutely.
But we might come back and revisit this. And if you feel a certain way, you should comment below. If you have more knowledge about this or ideas why, you know, you would vouch for one or the other, like argue it below, not argue in like, you know, I'm mercurial. So put your banter below, or put your best case up below, or let us know, like, if you have any info to why you felt compelled towards leaning towards one or the other. We'd love to hear from you to see what you
I lean more towards strength, being the sun, the representative of Leo, specifically, not because it has a lion only, but because you have the strength, the justice card being more of a Libra tone. The sun is not about weighing things. The sun is not about making a case for one thing versus the other. The sun is, and everything that is with that sense of truth, it doesn't have, you don't have to think much about it. There is this passage on the book from the Pythagorean deck that is talking about how this girl that in that deck is named Andrea, for a specific reason of the meaning of the name, left the sword aside, because she has a sword depicted in the card apparently, and she leaves it aside to face the lion with her bare hands. And that's the her taming the beast. You know, it's the human mind, but it's a woman. You know, the strength card is not representing a man, which would be representative of physical strength, trying to tame a lion. It's representing a woman trying to tame a lion with her bare hands. So it's about the subconscious mind being able to be tamed by the superconscious mind, the conscious mind, in that sense, not in a way that inhibits it, but in that way of where they're always struggling. You see, they're always in that context. They are interacting with each other in most of those depictions. So it's this constant contact of the subconscious mind and the animal nature, and kind of how you deal with that consciously.
The solar, lunar qualities together.
Okay. Yeah.
The dance.
You see the divine coupling, I think you could say.
Yeah, the divine coupling and how they kind of merge into each other's cards, I guess, is what I was kind of thinking or seeing. Like you see the Leo qualities in the Cancer Decan, and you see the Cancer qualities here in the Leo Decan. They're almost like, yeah, paired together conceptually.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. But yeah, I mean, you can't deny the symbolism of there being lions in like every single depiction of this card. So that's not to be ignored
Yeah,
when we're identifying it with Leo. But yeah, the thing that I want to mention too, that is interesting about this card is that it doesn't just I think we've been alluding to this the whole time, but just to make it clear, it doesn't just represent physical strength or material fortitude. It also represents moral and spiritual strength and fortitude. And so that's something important to remember about the woman. I think that's what David was saying. The woman who's unprotected, she's not in armor, she's in soft garb, just with her bare hands, taking care of that. But regardless of that, there is a myth associated with this card, and that is Heracles and the Nemean lion, which is, it was one of his 12 labors, Heracles or Hercules, you might often hear him referred to. They had to do 12 labors in order to gain immortality, even though he was half god. He was one of the illegitimate offspring of Zeus. And he defeated a lion and ended up wearing that lion's skin as he continued through the rest of his labors. So you'll often see depictions of Heracles with that lion skin to demonstrate his strength. And so even though these are women depicted in the card, I did want to mention that as a myth that's often associated with strength and force. I'm
glad you brought that up too, because we did touch on that, because Austin tells that story in the Cancer Decans, remember?
Yes.
So it's cool that comes back around again, reflecting each other. It's the luminaries.
Absolutely. That's a little bit about the card of strength, which is for our sign of Leo. This is just a card again talking about what the eights might mean across the deck to gain a little numerological significance. But the second major arcana card associated with this decan is the planetary ruler, which is Saturn, and that's the world card. So these are three depictions of the world. We've seen this card before in Taurus, alongside the Seven of Pentacles, as the pip card for that decan. So the world card with the ovum, the circle around the figure, is very interesting and also very consistent. You see that represented most of the time in the world cards. And what I found interesting in T. Susan's Chang book, 36 Secrets, which we love dearly, she makes an excellent point that this ring could be considered an arena in which the game takes place. It's the structure, the rules, the boundaries around maybe it's not friendly, but around a competition, which is a key word that we should remember for when we get to the Five of Wands. You can think of Saturn. Those are some natural, thoughts that come to mind when you're asking about Saturn terms. Confinement, rules, restrictions, borders, all of those things. And so I think that I just wanted to call attention to that in the world card here, that's kind of baked into the meaning of this card.
Yeah, that's cool to think about it as an arena in this case, because we've got that under pressure, kind of like in spot, boiling over, kind of like thing that happens with Saturn and the sun. And then with the fives, and Austin mentions like that we're vying for the top spot, like everybody's trying out for the leading role on the stage, or maybe not everybody, some people are shying away from it, but however you look at that, shying out of the spotlight or vying for the leading role, you've still got that essence.
Absolutely. Another quote that she makes in her chapter on this Decan is kind of differentiating the Saturn that we saw in Taurus or an earth sign from the Saturn that we're seeing now in a fire sign. She says, in the suite of fire, Saturn's stringencies make for increased effort and ambition, but in the suit of earth, they led to inertia and contemplation. So just a little bit of food for thought there about how Saturn differs in these two different signs, different decans.
Yeah, it's much more, I feel like it's much more rebellious instead of like structured and like, slow and steady wins the race. Like you could see like an earth sign being much more compatible for that like slower time. And of course, just like you see here, you see the fixed signs, which we talked about before in the corners. So
Right.
when you're talking about fixed earth specifically, which is Taurus, you're talking about something or someone who doesn't mind, oh, if I cultivate the fields now, I can think about later and I can go slow and steady and I can do this and that. When you get into the fire quality, you've got this idea of rebellion, which also is very enmeshed with the idea of Sun and Saturn together, which is this idea of usurping the king, or dark versus light, or this kind of rebellious, or
the revolutionary, the anarchist, those are all Aquarian, aka Saturnian archetypes.
Capricornian to any Saturn myth, and especially when it's put up against the sun, because Saturn is not in a position of strength when it's in the sun sign. The sun is. So we have to remember that as well. And that's going to cause battling, or infighting, or the kinds of things we see with the 5 of Wands.
Yep.
Definitely. I mean, Saturn is limits. And if you think about the junction, getting now to the 5 of Wands, if you think about the junction of the world and of strength, is you reinforcing your narrative, your experience. It's kind of a despotic side of Saturn, we could say, in the sense that you really will not give up any inch of your perspective in order to appease others. It's part of who you are. It's part of that essence that you self-determine through that particular ideal, and you embody it as a part of your own personality, as a part of you, who you are. And if there's a conflict with that from outside sources, there's a conflict with you directly. You identify with that narrative so closely.
If we are taking Saturn's lower qualities, quote unquote, lower qualities, or less desirable qualities, or something like this, which might manifest when a planet is in its detriment, you can see sort of resentment. So if someone is picked and you're not picked, or something like that, say you're both going out for the role and someone else is picked and they're so beloved and kind and warm-hearted, meanwhile you're in the background stewing because of
that's Saturn taking its joy in the 12th house.
Yeah, and it can feel very much again, back to the haves and the have-nots, but just that fight of just oh yeah, everybody loves you and I'm resentful because of it, or whatever. Of course you got cast for the role and I did not, or this or that, and you get this sort of whatever it is, sibling rivalry, or just competitiveness in general, or resentment in general.
Yes,
I love it. So these are some depictions of the 5 of Wands, all really, really speaking to that sort of combativeness. And it all looks very crowded too. I have to mention a frenzy of effort. But what I think is important to remember about the 5 of Wands is that these are a bunch of small fights. They're not usually the sort of explosive journey ending fight that would, combust. They're not combustible. It is rather a pressure cooker, and one of the ways in which it's a pressure cooker is really at the hands of that despotic Saturn, which is the striving for perfection. That can be something that causes a lot of this inner tension. And the recommendation, again, like I said, we always like to bring up the recommendation, both from T. Susan Chang, but also just kind of thinking through logically about what that means when it's put together. The pressure from perfection is just, when you pull this card, working for the sake of work to release pressure. You know, it's not necessarily that it needs to be perfect or right. Just you need to do something.
I had that thought, like something similar actually, of when you get Saturn and the Sun together in their best nature, let's say, when Saturn is serving the Sun. When Saturn is serving the Sun, let's say you do get picked for the role, or you do get picked for the play or whatever, you're going to have to work day and night on that character, whether or not it's perfected. It's this like work of art. Again, when we think of Saturn as has its exaltation in Libra, a sophisticated piece of art that you really care about is going to require dedication, work, no sleep, no rest, no food, like all of these things, because you have been selected, you take this deep responsibility. And responsibility can be the Sun as well, but it's this very Saturnine quality of like, you know, if I am selected out of the crowd, or if I do have my moment in the spotlight, I'm going to make it the best that I can and work the hardest I can, which is kind of a Saturnine attribution, I suppose.
And I want to offer a new perspective on this, and kind of throwing in another direction, which is we just begin a new fixed sign, which is a fire sign. And fire's all about manifesting, all about creating, all about bringing into reality, doing, energy being spent by the bounds. But when you have a fixed energy, it doesn't go very well with fire. And so it makes sense that we would start with Saturn, because it's like, we know from the previous signs that life is unstable. We got to be stable through that instability of circumstance. We've had that experience. Now we are a full-formed human being, and you're never falling for those, traps again. We are going for straight for the target, and we're never going to stray from our path again. And so you kind of get into this Leo energy with, I must never let go of this idea of who I am, and anything that comes into conflict with that is a threat to my own sense of self. And I think perhaps the lesson to be learned within this Decan, or whatever magical work you're doing with it, or if you're born within it, could be one of understanding that you have to let go of that vision of who you are in order to embody the truth of who you are in each moment throughout life. And that's the lesson of the world combined with strength. You got to be sure of who you are enough so that you allow yourself to change and be other people. That's
be
basically
other
it.
people, or put on the mask, like Austin
Put on
was
the
talking
mask, yeah.
about. Yeah, and I really like that. And I also, if you think of the squabbling or something like this, we just had the Chariot out conquering lands. Let's say the Chariot is like out there starting something new. Well, it's not to be without like conflict of roles, let's say, like who gets what, where we are, the disruption of roles. But it's really interesting to think about this. Yes, fire, but fixed fire, and Saturn having this kind of fixity to it. It would be more fixed here in this Decan than we would see all throughout the upcoming Decans of Leo.
Totally.
It's interesting too that Leo is ruled by all superior planets. If you think of it, it's Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. All of them are masculine in nature. I mean, Saturn's arguably feminine in nature, but it balances its own nature when it's in a diurnal nativity. It's of the day sect because it gets balanced by the energy of the two other planets, but it's still a superior planet.
Yeah.
So it's all the higher faculties of the sun, let's put it like that are working within these decans.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I like that. I like that observation.
It's one of those planets that's comfortable rising, likely rising in the morning sky and things like that. So it's a very masculine planet. It exalts the sun in Aries.
Yes, it exalts the sun. Yeah, I like that. Those are all really amazing points. Thanks for bringing that.
Another keyword that is often brought up in relation to the Five of Wands, which is, I think, a a hot topic right now, if only for the show, is succession. Succession, which means when one ruler is overtaken by another, or not even a ruler, but a patriarch or a vaunted figure, an elder figure. When somebody succeeds them, they take over from them. And this calls to mind another myth, which is that of Kronos and Zeus. Zeus was a child of Kronos. Kronos had heard a prophecy that his son would overthrow him, so he decided to eat all of his children. Zeus's mother famously replaced Zeus the baby with a stone, and so his father ate the stone, and they hid Zeus away, and when he was grown up, he came and he killed Kronos, and that prophecy was fulfilled. So this fight is actually supposed to be like Kronos and Zeus fighting, which leads into the next card, which is going to be for Leo 2, which is the Six of Wands. And that's a card of victory and of the actual, like, you know, parade after the succession and the happiness of the defeated despot, the old Kronos figure. And when you think of this, again, is the Sun and Saturn. It's the overthrowing of the father by the son coming up into a new singularity. So
exactly. And Jupiter and the Sun are like these, you know, top dogs or whatever, and Saturn's like the bad guy. And here you see like Saturn being cast out, Cronus being cast out by Jupiter, Jupiter coming to this space of victory, the Sun also having victory over Saturn in this position because of Saturn's detriment. Yeah, completely, absolutely.
And then on the far right, we have the Mother Piece deck, which is one that we always like to bring in because it has a really nice set of symbols and stories behind each one of the cards, both major and minor arcana. And the story behind this card is that these are women who are fighting to be the next high priestess, but they also love and respect each other because they're members of the same like spiritual class, the same spiritual group. So again, this is getting at the idea that this is not a life or death battle, at least in this case. And it's kind of a competition among equals to some extent, to succeed, again, to have the succession of the high priestess carry on. So that's the story of this card. And you'll notice that there is a lion goddess up here in the corner, also calling back to this Leo relevance of the card for this card. And there's also this kind of phoenix figure in the back corner, which it kind of symbolizes, you know, that things are being burnt down, and maybe this is scary right now, but it's all going to come out on the other side as a renewed sense of life. The new priestess will be born through the conclusion of this little skirmish.
Yeah, the Phoenix also is just kind of that usurping, that whole Saturn Sun dynamic that we've talked about of like burning one to behold the other, or something like this, or just the idea of transformation. Mm-hmm. And I like the volcano as well, because it's that pressure cooker of something just exploding. And I know we think of that sort of explosion or fighting or things like this as like Mars, but it's really this kind of like transformational quality when you have to butt up against the idea of the dark and the light, which we must do when we're looking at Leo, the king, the kingdom, the All-Father, you know?
Okay.
Sometimes a lot of our understanding of who we are and our capabilities just comes through conflict. It's like you have been tested, you have gathered inner knowledge, but then comes a new situation that allows you to break free from the cycle. It doesn't take as long as the others. It's like sometimes you have been in an abusive relationship for years, and then another one for a couple more years, and then another one for 1 year. And then the last one, you only spend 1 or 2 months because you're like, nope, I've seen this before. I don't need to go all over it again. And so this is the moment of the Five of Wands to me, when you're like, nope, I see this conflict for what it is, and I am not going to go through it again. It's just that aha moment. And I say that because I was reflecting on the singular, these individualistic figures that are in these cards. If you look like closely enough, you will see that in all of them, you have 2 of the wands and of the characters holding those wands interacting, whilst one of them is standing out from the rest of the pack. Like even in the Rider Waite, you have 4 of the wands enmeshed, like entangled, and you have one of them like being held apart from the bunch. The one immediately to the right away is there's this person standing above all of those below him, kind of smirking. You have the one figure on the left wearing blue, with the one kind of separated, and even on the Mother Peace deck, the Phoenix is standing over one woman who has a different position on her staff in relation to the other women. So there's always this one thing that is revealed within the thing that breaks the stability of that cycle. So you can just be like, nope, I need to move another direction. And then you kind of, it's the nudge that you needed to kind of start moving in the next direction. It selects by showing you all the things that are pressuring you from the things that you are not, that are pressuring you to fully embody who you are. It's kind of that Saturnian challenge to your identity, so you can outshine that challenge by embodying your full potential.
Yeah, I like that. When you were speaking, that's exactly what I was thinking is, Saturn identifies itself by everything that it is not. And we do that so much, like as we gain our way towards wisdom, which could be a Saturnine thing, like wisdom in age or whatever, where like we've learned what doesn't work for us by process of elimination. It's not like you just wake up one day and you just select the life that you want or whatever. You just select the spirit that's going to come through. You have this spirit that's sort of driving you. It's kind of blinding you, which is the sun. It's like blinding you towards this thing and you can't totally see. But Saturn says like, well, it's not this and it's not that. I'm thinking of this chant that I do, Manobu Dyahanka Chitta. So it's like, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not the ears, I'm not the eyes, I'm not the this, I'm not that, I'm this pure consciousness, right? So it's like, I'm not this, I'm not that, but I'm pure consciousness. And it's kind of turning away all of the things of life in order to end up on the path of selection. What am I? I'm pure consciousness, and I'm not the body, and I'm not the mind, I'm not the ears, I'm not the eyes. And so that is a process of wisdom that we see of Saturn in the sun, Oh
man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I had a couple other representations of the Five of Wands here, but in the interest of time, there's not a whole lot that I want to say about them. I just really like how in the wands in this Micah Ulrich deck, the wands are represented by sunflowers, which is a very Leo, a Leo symbol. So I'll definitely.
No, I have something to say on that science deck.
Okay, sure. Yep.
Because it's nuclear fusion that they're talking about there. So it's like that conflict image of the Five of Wands, perfectly describing in this particular depiction how the selection principle of the sun, like they become one thing. Those, after that one explosion where the fusion happens, you have a new element that is revealed from that conflictual, space. It's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And it's a very violent process. And in the companion guide to this science deck, it also talks about how it can be a very long-lived process and full of potential, aka like nuclear fusion. And we see as well that Saturn element, the long-lived, enduring energy. It's not just the energy of the sun; it's Saturnian.
And isn't it pressurized? Isn't it like extremely pressurized?
Fusion happens in the core of stars, and that's what gives the sun its capability of of radiating life to everything else around it.
I love that.
So that too speaks to Leo. It's all about the sun. It's all about the sun.
This science deck is really growing on me.
It was so hard to learn how to use, to be honest. It was very hard to learn how to use, but I really recommend it after gaining a new appreciation for the symbols.
Within context of this Decan walk, it's like it hasn't disappointed thus far.
It's super enriching.
It's always brought up the best reflections. Like it really symbolizes these Decans well.
I agree. I totally agree.
Hey, I'm glad you like it. All right, so now we have these the Pythagorean cards, our new deck.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring to you guys a couple of verses that are present in the little book that comes with the deck. So the verse that you have looking at the world card which is represented here on the right, is the dancer looks both ways and holds the keys that show the rising, falling vortices. Her dance expands within the world and takes the world within. In her, the world awakes. Unreal divisions yield to unities. And you have the verse of strength or fortitude card saying, with gentle hand and eye, she charms the beast and teaches him the time to speak. Released from fear of one another, freedom grows. For each, a bond that blossoms like the rose. It's love, not force or fear, that tames the beast.
Wow, I love that. I've always thought of that actually with when we see the taming of the beast, of just like almost this such enlightened nature of love that even animals are soothed and just their natures are tempered essentially just because of the warmth of the loving nature of this priestess. Like it's easy. It's like this eternal, like a guru like mother that she just walks through the forest, and the birds and the bees and the lions and the trees all just sort of like bow their natures to her because it's so like them or in tune with them or something like this, you know? It just inspires it. It's love. It's love. It's just like, it's just encompassing. It's completely encompassing to man and beast alike.
And I want to bring the regalness of the situation of like being, you will not kill a beast like a lion or a bear with your bare hands if you're not smart. You can be the brute you want. If you're not smart enough, that animal is going to tear you apart because that animal is in tune with its nature and its body. That animal knows its body better than any human because they don't have to keep thinking about its functionalities or trying to sabotage themselves all the time out of fear of how they're going to be perceived by others from their own species, which is kind of ridiculous. But now you think of it. But when you bring up myths like around David from the Bible, the king of the Hebrews from the Bible, that particular narrative singles David as king or chosen by God to be anointed as king, as the next king, through a few signs. He was the last son of, I don't know how you say his name. We say Jesse or Jesse. I don't know if you guys call it Jesse. I don't know. David's father tells the priest, the prophet, that his son killed a lion with his bare hands to protect one of his sheep. He was a shepherd, and he killed the lion with his bare hands. And he was supposed to be not very strong. He was supposed to be like a skinny boy, very, aerodynamic built, but he killed a lion. So that's one of the things, in a bear, I think, or it was that Simpson, but he killed a lion. And so it's one of those things that kind of singled out his personality as, he is in control of himself enough to use his physical strength and his intellect at the same time. He is therefore one that is supposed to be paid attention as selected by God for something, because that's no small feat.
Yeah. And I love, there's like I don't know what this is. I'm going to slaughter this, but like some new age saying, but I mean, there's something to it because I'm bringing it up, but like the fear cannot exist in the absence of love. No, it's like something about like only where there's like not love can fear exist or something like this, right?
Oh yeah, love casts out fear.
Yeah, something like this. So you see the sword is just on the ground. She's like, no, like I don't need to tame this beast. And she's like, oh, hi, little kitty, let me see your teeth. She's kind of like examining, like, oh, nice teeth you have or whatever. But it's just
however, she's like wearing lion skin around her, which again is like calling back to that Heracles, the myth of the slaying of the Nemean lion. And it's kind of fierce, it's kind of scary.
And there's that familiarization as well. By knowing how the lion move enough that you can master it, it's kind of like you become the lion in a way, because there is a part of it that you have been able to anticipate. Like, think about when you're fighting someone, you have to anticipate their moves. And that's a good fighter, the one who's able to immediately, instinctively react with the right moves in order to neutralize the attacks from their opponent. And so when you do that with a lion, you practically became a beast yourself, but consciously. And so this is truth. This is embodiment of true nature. when those things are not dissonant and they're not in conflict, but you kind of embody the conflict in a way that allows you to navigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing your opponent, like she like knows what she's dealing with. She's like inspecting like the teeth, and she's giving this crown of, or this this garland of roses to this lion, right? Who's just like almost like this prize fighter in a sense. And she's like knowing her opponent so thoroughly that, yeah, like you said, it's neutralized in love, or like our animal nature is neutralized by love or by enlightenment or something like this, and gives us that inner bravery to sort of slay our own beasts or know them well enough to know what we're dealing with, and therefore they don't have power over us anymore.
The book that accompanies this deck calls it her familiar. The woman's familiar, calls the lion the woman's familiar. And that's it for those of you who know what a familiar is.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome.
I did want to mention that in Chang's chapter on this Decan, she does mention something of the Picatrix. She does in many of her chapters, but I think David's going to speak on the Picatrix now, and there's an allusion, I think, to Zeus and Kronos there as well.
There is. We have the first face of Leo, right? There rises a man wearing dirty clothes. And there rises with him the image of a rider looking to the north, and his body looks like a body of a bear and the body of a dog. This face is a face of strength, generosity, and victory. This is its form. So here we see generosity, we see victory, we see strength. All of those words, they are associated with everything that we were speaking before. The Picatrix agrees with it, endorses it, but there is the generosity bit with it that is very much Leo, that wasn't mentioned before here still. We have this giving nature of the sun that is like, when you embody your true nature, it becomes easy for you to manifest through your mortal coil, whatever it is. It becomes not tiring at all. It's like energy just comes out of the universe and flows through you because you enjoy doing that so much. It's you, right? You're expressing more of you through that particular activity. And I think that this really speaks to that side of this particular deck and this piece in the Picatrix. The man with the dirty clothes, represented by Saturn, right? Representing Saturn, the raggedy dressed man. Yeah. And so it's just this idea of, yeah, what you were not, and just being generous also, I think, with that side of you that rises with the man, the rider. Just also that idea of, you know, have your subconscious nature, you have a shadow side, you have to be in tune with. I feel like those things are speaking to one another here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do talk about that within the Fortitude card as well, like this ease in which she walks through the world and tames the lion, almost like it's given itself generously to her, or her generosity of spirit just compels the lion. And ease again and again came up when I was reading the Little White Books around this card. And yeah, it's the heart of the sun is a warm and generous that shines for all alike, you know, a warm and generous thing that shines for all alike. So, you know, I know when we talk about the sun, we talk about the spotlight or the selection, or that the haves and the have nots, but really sun is also this eternal quality of shining on everyone the same in this like beautiful, generous, or the nature of generosity here, you know. And we think of Leo as the heart. So it's a warm and compassionate heart, especially and even for the Saturnine figures, you know, the raggedy or the downtrodden or something like this. You know, the sun has enough to give. Even when Saturn's in its detriment here and it's lowly, the sun comes up with this idea of generosity for all.
And someone with this kind of energy that embodies their true self actually radiates this energy of embodiment of who you are in truth to the people around them. They cause an impact. This is a fire sign. Whenever you see someone with a moon, sun, or rising in a fire sign, they will cause an impact, and people will turn their heads and they will want to see what that person is doing in the room. Not because they are super special, but because they embody truth in the way they move sometimes. And then they cause that kind of discomfort in people that are not embodying that same level of sincerity in whatever, you know, topic they're talking about or environment that they're set into. Yeah, fire generally causes that kind of commotion and changes the environment around it. It radiates that energy. And I feel like here you get that a little intensified because of the sun.
I mean, and if you have someone vying for the spotlight and they're not a real solar character, then you do get that resentment of like, who do they think they are? And why does everybody like them? And like, why do they even think they're hot shit behind closed doors? They're like such an asshole, or they're so egotistical, or they only care about vanity or looks.
I mean, that can be a real insult to call somebody super solar. I know I do it sometimes. I'm like, whoa, you're a little too solar for me.
Yeah, but if you're around a real fire like quality or a real generous archetype or something, like you think of like literally a campfire, a bonfire, or a flame you offer at your thing, or a candle at your altar, or a candle or something like this. It's radiating this warm, nurturing light that you can't help but be captivated by. So when it's a real true solar figure, it does melt and warm the heart and provide light to like everyone there, you know. And it is generous to like everyone around the fire. It cooks our food, it breaks down our nutrients, it lights our way in the dark. So yeah, I think it's just when it's kind of like tainted with these qualities of like you know, the push and pull of the Saturn sun and the vying for some kind of like solar ray that doesn't come from within but comes from without, that we see these conflicts arise.
Do you guys want to say anything else? We can talk about nativities if you have some examples. If you guys...
Oh, you're muted.
Did you talk about the image? It might have been in Agrippa and not in the Picatrix, about the figure that is about to hit his father. So this is something.
It's not in the Picatrix. It's not in the.
No, it must have been in Agrippa then, and I just took this out of context from T. Susan Chang's book. But there is a Decan image for Leo 1 that, you know, it centers around a male protagonist as well, and mentions everything that you just did. Sometimes he's looking north, oftentimes has dirty clothes, but there is also an image that says he is about to hit his father in this image. So that's the cruel side, right? So there is the magnanimity of the Leo 9 quality of the sun, but there is also cruelty that can be a part of the sun too. And again, that is the piece that I was specifically thinking calls back to the Zeus and Kronos myth, is because that is a Zeus beating and killing his father in order of succession.
If you think it is a bit worse, because you can't kill a Titan and we still have time. So clearly Saturn's not really dead. So what you do is you overcome that patriarchal, that first patriarch, by neutralizing their power and making it your bitch. And you kind of throw it in Tartarus, and you're like, you're not getting out of there. I control you. I dictate what you're going to do. And now, instead of being slaves to time and to circumstance and to our own instincts, like in the Saturnian age, we evolve to this part of where consciousness and technology kind of overtake the ideal self, kind of overtakes the reality of the world. You know, it creates an imbalance. It's not meant to be like that. The order is not that, you know? Yeah. And so that's why many times in these cultures, we also have like an image of the end of the world or how it could end coming after that. Like, yeah.
And I just want to remind us too that when we talk about the myth of Saturn and Zeus, Saturn's original like sort of domain was called the Golden Age. And it's a complicated matter because it could be seen as a matter of power struggle, like if they were living this golden age, but someone else wanted the throne and he took advantage of someone weaker, i.e. an old man versus like a young man, right? Like it's much easier to hit someone who's weaker than you or older than you. It's much easier to sort of throw away or dismiss wisdom for the glory of the now. And I just wanted to, you know, interject that aspect here when we're looking at the usurping of power, where it's not necessarily, you know, a good power trying to beat a bad power. It's not that simple, right? Or something like this.
No, it's like the falling from Eden. I compare the overtaking of the throne by Jupiter of Olympus to the fall of men in Bible myths, because you have this idea of before we were one with the good, with God, and then when knowledge came in, this idea of self came in. We also have all of these distortions that are caused by fear and the knowledge of self, that the shadow side of it. And that's when Satan begins existing as well. So the fall
I
of
wanted to talk
Kronos
about that.
changes it into from you know, loving father into this who it's his children, into this Satan, you know, into this satanic figure.
Yes, Saturn is actually an angel of heaven, but gets cast down or cast out, just like Zeus cast Saturn out because he was too old, or he was this or that, which was said to be a golden age before. So maybe Jupiter's the one that's power hungry, and Saturn's the one that's like humble and old and wise.
Well, when
and
you
maybe
think about
Satan and Saturn are the same character being cast out. When we think of Saturn, we are thinking of the one that's cast out of the tribe, the one on the outskirts of the city, the poor one, the downtrodden one, the man with wisdom but tattered clothes, the renunciate, things like this. And that's the same thing of like the angel who challenged being cast out and now thought of as Saturn or demon-like or something, which I think we probably will cover this a lot more when we get to the devil card too. Like when we get to the Capricorn and Saturn cards, we're probably going to belabor this.
Got a lot to say about that.
I know we do, but let's. I mean, this is already churning up those talks and those waters. Now we're coming from a solar perspective, but when we get there, we're going to be coming from the Saturnine perspective, and that's that again, that drama that's playing out between the Sun and Saturn. Go ahead, Katie, you were saying something.
I was just going to say, with myth in general is kind of stagnant in our telling of it. That doesn't really grow from where it exists now in the cultural consciousness. But what we have to remember is that they're really just different parts of the same life. Okay, so Zeus usurped Kronos, and you know, someday Zeus is going to be usurped in all reality, in all likelihood, and then they're going to take the path of Kronos and be the fallen ruler. And so we just have to remember that even though these are two archetypes, it doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive in somebody's life. You know, they can really come together in that way. It's kind of tragic. And
it's tragic, and to me personally, it's beautiful. And it's like, because you almost can't separate this when we're talking about plays and dramas and the spotlight of Leo and like behind the stage versus on the stage. You cannot piece them apart. They're on the same tension. They are almost the same. It's that yin and yang kind of polarity that you see, where it's like almost the same thing. They're both wise and loving, but yet they're on this polarity that I find.
And the path of becoming, we embody those energies, as you were saying, Katie. We embody these energies throughout our life. Sometimes we are Saturn, sometimes we are Jupiter. When we're young, particularly, especially if you're in the Western society, in a patriarchal society, if you're a young male, you grow up almost with a promise that you will have to break up with your father, that you will have to leave your father's nest, that they actually resent you for being there. And stuff, and it's like this pressure on your mind to be like independent and to become who you have to become. It's the pressure. Just to round up the thought, when you grow up, you realize that it's not that simple. You kind of rebel against your father. You do all the you break away, and you're like, I killed my father in my mind and in my heart. I am not my father. I am going to not make the same mistakes. For many of us, that's how it works. And then when you find yourself at your father's age or with your kids and stuff like that, you're like, oh shit.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Who knew?
Wait, we don't know what we're doing? Fathers aren't like kings in the sky.
This
yeah,
is really
it's that,
hard.
yes, it's that pressure on a young man, or I mean, in your example of like a young boy and his father, which is like, you know, what we always hear of, like, you too one day will be the man of the house or something like this. That pressure, whether it's the pressure to align with the status quo or take on the father's business, quote unquote, or are we going to try to do it completely different than the father, or be our own person completely separated from the father, or walk in his footsteps?
But then
And
when
yeah,
we see the next generation, right, it's like we are in that Saturnian role. We try to limit their actions because we know what works and what doesn't, and we become that Saturn in a way of being like, I need to eat their youth because they're not going to make the same mistakes that I did or something. They're not going to overthrow me. I'm going to stay relevant.
And to the point you were making earlier, David, just to remind the viewer that Saturn and Jupiter are both day planets, so they both work with the sun, and we're getting Saturn right now, and next time we come to you, we're going to be doing Jupiter. So we've got these, David said the two superior planets, I said the biggest planets, right? The same thing, same word, but we're going to get them back to back here, and they're both day sect planets. They're both the bodyguards of the sun, shall we say, the spear bearers for the sun, on the sun's team. And looking at these qualities exactly as we're talking about is the next generation, and who's ruling, and who am I, and all these day-like solar qualities that we're going to kind of contrast next time when we bring you the Jupiter-ruled Decan versus the Saturn-ruled Decan.
So do we have some nativities that we want to get to?
Yeah.
Totally.
All right, so we have a little list here. Katie, is there anyone you want to mention, or Elsa?
I mean, I like Carl Jung because we're kind of talking about these polarities, right? Of like, do we want to destroy or become lovers with the, you know, opposite parents or something like this? Just the nature of this dark and light, this consciousness versus subconscious or unconscious reality really speaks to me of the Jungian principles.
And he's someone who really gave us words about, you know, how do we become who we become, right? The process of becoming yourself, and of that your psyche goes through, and how it gets, how you reveal things to yourself throughout your life path and all of that. So yeah, I see that in him.
Kate Bush. That's
Kate
hilarious
Bush!
because she's
If I only
recently
could.
back up in the, you know, I think I read something somewhere that she's about 60 now or something, and she owns all the royalties to that song. So every time we listen to it and it gets a ping on the license, it's all going to her. So
happy birthday, Kate Bush, I guess. She must be celebrating now.
This isn't on your list, but Jason Momoa, a huge celebrity crush of mine. I know, Elsa, we've talked about it. But he's in this Decan, his son is in this Decan, and I thought that was pretty cool, with his one of his big roles being Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones, the leader of the nomadic horse tribe.
Aquaman?
Which nomadic horse tribes, yeah, nomadic horse tribes are definitely Saturn, but being the leader is definitely the sun. And you see him as like this menacing character there, but also once you know, get to know the character somehow, you're thinking of him as like a more warm being or something like this. And then of course the Aquaman role has like this kind of archetypal nature to it as well, as far as the Greek pantheon or something like this goes.
He's a leader, you know,
Arnold,
leader.
Sorry.
He always plays a leader. He's a leader, you know, in a lot of these movies. So
we have Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a governor for one of the, you know, one of the states, like for California. He is also a bodybuilder. So I don't think
that attention.
I don't think. Sorry.
Likes that attention.
Likes that attention.
Lifting heavy weights.
We have Mick Jagger. We have J.K. Rowling. Not what? And we have the Daniel Radcliffe
and Harry Potter
Onassis.
Himself. Harry Potter himself is his birthday.
Harry Potter is a Leo 1.
July 31st. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
I know this.
Yes. I was thinking it's the 31st, but yeah, you're right. And so someone who embodied Harry Potter, a character that was born supposedly in that Decan.
Same Decan. Yeah.
Benito Mussolini. Happened.
And Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, which
Yeah, she got a couple.
She holds quite the esteemed role when you think about someone who's like somewhat archetypal of like, you think of these Leos as like archetype of like fashion or celebrity or like perfect poise or something like this that she tried to,
But she was though. She really was. I mean, get your husband shot right beside you and then just face the press and everything else right afterwards with the way she did, with like a cool head and knowing how to do politics in the middle of it, and all of that, just keeping up the PR. She was flawless.
Yeah.
Flawless in, fashion. When I think of like, I think of iconic fashion and sort of like spotlight, which J-Lo, she'll go down in time as like the pinnacle of sort of high status fashion with Jackie. I mean, not J-Lo, but Jackie.
Not J-Lo.
Well, okay, but listen, J-Lo is getting a little up there in years and she still looks effing awesome. Same with another Leo one who is Helen Mirren. She was a Bond girl back in the day and now in her, I believe, 70s, maybe getting close to 80s, but she still looks freaking banging in a bathing suit. She's a beautiful lady, a beautiful woman, but like it's that Saturnine like age is still present in her visage.
And just talking about like looking good at old age or just looking good in general or fashion or like how you present, on this stage of life or whatever. People talk about Leos, that being like very important to them or like them being vain or something like this. But it's a perfect solar Saturn thing because it's like, if I want to be seen in a certain light into old age, then you know how much work and sort of cutting or not cutting, that's a Mars world word, but sort of like
constricting.
Yeah, like you have to work out and like edit your wardrobe and know what looks good over time and know what's going to look good in the press and everything. And those sort of like choices are very Saturnine.
Oh, and on that same topic, Vivica A. Fox is another smoky older lady that's in this crew.
Nice. I can't say the same for Mick Jagger.
No, absolutely not.
He's had more of the like rough Saturn years, it seems like, that are reflected.
Well, he's this other like solar version of like this sort of, instead of sort of put together nicely, you do see that sort of just like in the spotlight rock star, just like party till you drop, Saturnalia, dare I say, kind of vibe with that like Sun and Saturn festive in the spotlight, look at me quality with his like fashion and rock and roll status or whatever into old age again. Okay, so I think that probably wraps it up. Let's go over news real quick. We're still doing the Demetra George Volume 2 Ancient Astrology Study Group monthly. You can join us over on Patreon. The links are going to be below and always in the About section as usual. And we have David Fisher from In the First Place. He's in the first place here on YouTube, as well as you have a couple other platforms. David, do you want to mention any of your tags or handles?
Yeah, I have my Twitter account at First Place Astro and In the First Place Astrology on Instagram as well, where you find a link tree to my website and all of that. And I want to also to mention that we are having a monthly meeting every last Wednesday of each month for the study of the, however many chapters we're looking at that particular time. But we also have practical meetings at every second Sunday of the month. But Matt and I are going to be holding that space. So if you're interested, you can get access on the Patreon to the previous videos of the previous recordings and join us in the next practical session. We're going to go over examples of what we studied last one.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like the monthly meeting, but I guess what David is saying is that there's more. There's a practicum session that you can sign up for. You also can sign up for a tier that you get the previous videos. So like we're recording all of our study sessions, and at a certain tier, if you want to catch up or re-listen or make notes, you can sign up for a tier that has, the recordings of all the sessions, the practicum and the study sessions. And then KD, you're at kddayton.com. Do you have anything else that you want to mention besides your website and trafficking people there for your offerings?
Yes, definitely. Come visit me if you'd like a tarot reading or an astrology reading. I love doing soul return readings for people. And I wanted to mention I'm also on Twitter at KD Dayton.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you both for being here once again. Thanks to the Pythagorean Tarot for being with us again. That's kind of a new add-on to these. That's really fun for us. So KD, would you like to take us out with Chi Susan Chang's poem? I know it's a little bit of a longer one, so I really appreciate you reading it for us.
All right, this is called Blood Pressure by Sandra M. Gilbert. The white-sleeved woman wraps a rubber sleeve around your arm, steps back, listens, whistles. How it pounds in you, how it urges through you, how it asserts its power like a tide of elections, flashing through your veins, shocking your fingertips, exhausting the iron gates of your heart. Alive, alive, always alive, it hisses, crackling like the lightning snake that splits the sky at evening. Alive, a black rain, lashing the hollows of your boy. Alive, alive. You sit quietly on the cold table, the good boy grown up into the good man. You say, you want nothing, you'll diet, you won't complain. Anyway, you say, you dream of January weather, hushed and white, the cries of light, silenced by a shield of ice. Behind your eyes, something like a serpent moves, an acid tongue flicking at your cheekbones, something voracious, whipping your whole body hard. You're sad. You flush a dangerous pink. You tell her you can't understand the fierce rain inside you. You've always hated that awful crackling in your veins.
So good. Thanks again, KD. Thanks again, everyone. Ciao. See you on Decans of Leo.
Matahia matao kakao bersama you demikian soba dah soba kena matahia nakau mati mahu demikian soba dan soba matahia nake ujung bahikana kamaya tak ongai koyo koyo masena matahari bekana sabaso inakina tabaine toyo guys imba yetona tabaike